I am not one of those that says we don't have race problems in the world. We do. There's always going to be race problems in this world. I think everybody would agree with that. I think everybody would agree that there are some serious race problems in this world. I do. I think people would say, you know what? We've got to solve certain things, and one of them is a race issue in here. Now, one of them is not going to an Indiana Fever basketball game on the road in Connecticut, ESPN's Landscape, which is like their it's a BET of ESPN. Let's put it that way, where everything must be discussed against the white person. It is not for, objective reporting. It is for, if you want that cap money, you get here in Landscape and you take a swing at being a social justice warrior, and hopefully, and I mean hopefully, you end up breaking through, and maybe ESPN puts you on television. Maybe ESPN puts you whatever Sarah Spain's show is. I don't know what the hell that show is, but that's what you're trying to do. That's what you are trying to get accomplished. Frankie de la Cretas is the latest in a long line of race-baiting dumbasses that spew hate and nonsense on ESPN. In fact, I got to tell you, yesterday, ESPN, Jeff Passan, who is the most punchable face in the history of television, wrote this scathing article about Pete Rose, brought all of his problems on himself on the day Pete Rose died. I actually sent an email to Jimmy Pitaro, the head of ESPN, who has always responded to my emails. He's always been great to me, but I just had to. I said, this is what you come up with? No reasonable human being could approve this on the day he died. Do you ever look at what you all have become? I figure I'm old. What do I care? So he gets mad. Hey, good for you. Stick it. Anyway, long story short, back to Frankie. Frankie say, relax. I say, Frankie, you relax. You're at a WNBA game and you feel unsafe. People had MAGA hats. People were dressed as fingernails. Guess what? It's a sporting event, you jackass, you dumbass, you fraud, you race-baiting fool. That's the best I could come up with. I should have come up with more. I'm at the Sun Fever game, and the vibe is horrendous. Oh, my God. The vibe is horrendous. The woman behind me was mocking Dejanay's eyelashes. So did Jason Whitlock, an African-American. So did Barkley. So did a lot of African-Americans. Like, what are you doing with eyelashes playing basketball? I mean, you want to be taken serious, or are we fashion model? Of course you're going to mock those idiotic eyelashes. And only stopped when my partner, turned around and told her to stop being racist. Well, everything's racist. Hey, if a white girl had eyelashes on in the middle of a basketball game, you're like, what's that idiot doing with eyelashes on? I mean, just stop it. Everything's racist to Frankie say relax. But Frankie say relax is an idiot. And she's trying for that cap money, yo. Everybody sees that there's a man in a MAGA hat. Oh, my God. That made me feel unsafe. Think about how weak this Frankie is. She's triggered, as the kids say, by a hat. That guy's got a hat on. That triggers me. Oh, my God. And people listen to this. I listen to it to make fun of this idiot, this jackass, this person who exemplifies everything that is wrong in our country, everything that is in America. This person exemplifies what some, not most, not even a lot, have become. Full of shit, liars, race baiters, hustlers, grifters. That's all. I don't even know if this is a woman or a chick. I assume it's a chick because of her partner. I assume this is a lesbian woman who went to a WNBA game with a bias to be like, oh, my God, I'm scared. If you're scared of a hat, I can't help you, sweetheart. I can't help you. Maybe you and your partner ought to go trans and grow a pair. That's the way I look at it. I mean, seriously, you go to a sporting event, people dress up, you jackass. There's a man in a MAGA hat, and there's this woman in a band nail shirt and cartoonishly fake nails. Oh, the horror. Oh, my God. Hey, look, go to the Milwaukee Brewers game. You're going to see a man dressed cartoonishly as a sausage, cartoonishly as a hot dog. And you know what he's doing? He's running. It's a sporting event, you ass. What do you think? It ain't church, lady. Everybody isn't coming in a black tie and tails with a top hat, you moron. It's a sporting event. Now, obviously, Frankie Say Relax came to this with a bias. She was going to rip the WNBA and the white crowd because, damn it, the Spice, Dejanay Carrington, and others who were far more racist than anybody in that crowd. I mean, this Dejanay Carrington, it's documented. All you got to do is look it up. So racist back in 2023, 2022. She's a racist fool. She hates white people. And now here comes this white girl, and everybody's defending the racist fool that has been racist for years. We now quote from an article, a paragraph that the ESPN editorial process somehow found to be up to standard. Every time the Fever scored, the crowd would erupt. Really? Shocking at a sporting event. But it didn't feel like fans were rooting for their team. It felt like a threat. Yeah, Frankie. I mean, between MAGA hats, people dressed up in costumes, and basketballs going through hoops, I could see why on them mean streets of Connecticut you were fearful. I can. There was an ominous feeling in the building. In the article, one of the reporters accused fans of threatening her safety, suggested the arena did not. Can you imagine? The security did nothing about it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine you're a security guard? You're probably an off-duty cop. You deal with a bunch of crap, and here comes some lesbian into a women's basketball game full of lesbians, and she's mad she doesn't feel safe. Now, seriously. If ESPN actually feels like its reporter was unsafe at the game, the logical response would be not to send reporters back to Fever games. Well, when I was at Iowa, I told you about the cop that said, anybody in Carver Hawkeye Arena, while I was doing the game in Carver Hawkeye Arena, please shoot Dakich in the head. I'm like, yo, I don't need that. So the next time I went to Iowa City, they're like, we're going to get you security. I said, that's cool. I don't care. Anyway, so security went with me. That's what you need to do if you're ESPN. If this crazy-ass race-baiting lesbian is so upset about being with other lesbians at a basketball game, watching a ball go through a hoop with a MAGA hat and fake fingernails, if she's so upset, then ESPN will send security with her the next time. But there won't be a next time. Why? Well, the Fever are out of the playoffs. And people are laughing at this idiot, openly scoffing. Even her brethren in the media, both gay and straight, are taking clips of her article and ripping her, as they should. It's amazing to me. Tyrese Halliburton, who has become third only to McAfee and me as most popular here in Indianapolis, is defending Caitlin Clark through all the hate. Here's Halliburton, the Pacer star.
I went to Fever games before this last year. I went to a ton because I love hoop. So to see kind of the explosion of women's basketball and for a big piece of that being the Fever and that being right in my backyard, I think was really, really cool to see. And I went to as many games as I could. I grew pretty close with Connor McCaffrey being an intern with us last year. And then I've grown to be pretty close with Caitlin and him, and me, her, him, and my girlfriend Jade all have a group chat that we talk in pretty often about everything. So it's been cool to just grow a friendship with her. And I don't want to be like everybody just wants to like get more from her, take more from her, like get more answers to things, and I don't want to be that. I just we're friends, and I think that's a cool part. If she wants to talk basketball, we'll talk basketball. If not, I'm totally fine with that as well. But I think we've grown a pretty cool friendship alongside Connor, and it's been really cool to see her growth this past year, and the Fever as a whole, to see Kelsey get some playoff experience, and just the whole group, Aaliyah, the whole group. So just really cool to follow the team, and it's unfortunate that they lost, but they're a young group. They'll be back for success, and now I'm locked in, watching more WNBA because the semis were last night.
Yeah, I didn't hear a word he said. All I heard was, I was all distorted in my ear, but I'm sure he defended Caitlin Clark, and rightfully so. I mean, it's amazing. These women have been racist and sexist for years. All people do is go back to their tweets, the hate they have shown white people. They're entitled. Yeah, I know they're queens. Yeah, but so's my ass. But anyway, I'm glad to see this all be exposed. Good for Caitlin Clark, good for the Fever, and good for the American sports viewer. The numbers watching these games drop to a third of what they were when Caitlin Clark was around, as they should be. You know, one of the biggest sports stories in the country, nobody wants to talk about, except for us here at OutKick, is the fact that San Jose State women's volleyball has a transgender person. Well, 3 schools have decided we're not playing against them. And OutKick has been at the forefront. Our friend Amber Harding has talked exclusively with, this is interesting, the captain of San Jose State, who has joined the lawsuit. Danny Zaksheske, a.k.a. Danny Z, a.k.a. A Pulitzer Prize winner, a future Pulitzer Prize winner, has been all over this story, and Danny joins me now. Danny, I got to tell you, when I saw Wyoming join this, along with, I believe it's Southern Utah and Boise State, I thought to myself, man, this could get interesting. This could go on and on and on. Give me the latest. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What's going on here?
Well, Dan, let me first say that they don't give awards like Pulitzer Prizes to people like us. So let's put that to the side immediately.
Dan,
this is a story I've been following for a long time. Credit to Redux. They were the first back in April earlier this year to point out that there was a transgender player on the San Jose State volleyball team. And just to give some background real quick, this person, Blair Fleming, went to high school in Virginia, initially went to Coastal Carolina University, which is in South Carolina. There was a bill that was bouncing around the state legislature in South Carolina that essentially would have banned transgender athletes from competing essentially biological males from competing in women's sports. So Fleming transfers to San Jose State, which is in California, which of course will have no such law, and they will not stop this from happening. So Fleming goes to San Jose State. Didn't play a ton last year. We've gotten some comments like, oh, these teams played against Fleming last year and they didn't say anything and they didn't care. Well, Fleming wasn't a big part of the team last year. Now Fleming is a starter, is one of the better players on the team. I do see a little bit of information. I want to make it clear. Fleming is not the best player on San Jose State's team. Fleming is second in most of the categories, but you can see it when you watch videos. Fleming jumps much higher, hits a lot harder, is extremely athletic. There's something different about Blair Fleming than the teammates on San Jose State. So initially, Dan, this all came about because Southern Utah, I noticed, I've been following this along, as I mentioned to you. I'd written a couple articles about Fleming, about San Jose State, about how they had turned off their comments because people were starting to notice. Well, out of nowhere, I was sitting around one Saturday night working, and I was looking, I was like, I think San Jose State plays tonight. Let me see how they did. Let me see how Fleming did. And the game was nowhere to be found. Couldn't find it on their schedule. Couldn't find it on the website. It was gone. It disappeared. And I was like, well, maybe I screwed up. Maybe they didn't play tonight. Maybe I had something wrong. And I happened to go on the Mountain West website, and I was like, the match was listed as canceled. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Why is it canceled? And if it is canceled, how come there's no statement? Like, we're not playing this game. There wasn't a statement on Southern Utah's website. So I reached out to Southern Utah, and I reached out to San Jose State, and I said, hey, all of a sudden, this match that was supposed to be played is canceled. There's nothing about it. There's no news stories about it. There's nothing. And Southern Utah wrote back, hey, we're not going to play this game. They wouldn't tell me why, but I asked them directly, did you cancel this match because there's a transgender player on San Jose State? And they did not respond. They didn't deny it, but they didn't say it was true either, which made it pretty obvious that's exactly what happened. Southern Utah canceled this match because they didn't want to play against Blair Fleming. All right, so we reported that exclusively, and now that became a story. And other women, and that's why this is so important, Dan. That's why I take this so personally, because when we speak out about this and we let people know what's going on, other women feel empowered to do the same. And that's what you're seeing here. That's why Boise State felt comfortable stepping up and saying, we're not doing this. And Wyoming, which had originally said they were going to play against San Jose State, changed its mind and said, you know what? No, we're not going to play against San Jose State. So these women, they're taking losses. They're not, there's only, you were a college athlete. You only have a limited number of games you get to play in your life. And they're giving one up for this cause, which I think is extremely admirable.
I think it's really admirable. Let me ask you, when this was canceled, this is kind of stupid to say, but do you think they were trying to keep it quiet? Did other media outlets reach out on this, or were you the only one?
You're talking about Southern Utah?
Yeah, no, the original game, yeah.
Yeah. Southern Utah. Yeah, Dan, as far.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not trying to sit up here and take a ton of credit and be like, I'm the one, but it was not reported anywhere. There was not a statement. There was nothing. I don't know that would have come to light at all if I hadn't sent a note to Southern Utah and asked them about it. I really don't. I'm not trying to sit here and say I'm taking credit for all this, but as far as I know, I'm the only one who noticed it. I'm the only one who reached out, and I'm the only one who wrote a story about it. And anyone who wrote a story about it after that sourced OutKick, as they should have, because we were the ones who uncovered the fact. I do think they were trying to quietly cancel it, but that's as far as I can go with it right now.
Let me ask you, because is this accurate? The captain, there's a lawsuit. The captain of San Jose State, the team that has a transgender athlete, joined the lawsuit?
Yeah, so there's a Title IX lawsuit that Riley Gaines is a part of. Many female athletes are a part of, essentially about, it's a violation of Title IX. This is a transgender person who is taking a spot on a team, on a women's team, away from a biological woman, sharing a locker room and everything that goes along with being on a women's athletic team in college. And yes, Brooke Slusser is her name. And she joined the lawsuit, and then she spoke with OutKick and talked to Amber, who did a fantastic job with that interview. And go read it. I encourage all of your listeners to go read that article.
What'd she say?
It's a tough spot for these girls, right, Dan? She didn't want to talk too much about Fleming and didn't want to disparage Fleming, and I don't either. To be perfectly frank, I feel bad. I feel bad for Blair Fleming. This is a human being who is obviously extremely confused, is going through a very difficult time. As far as we can tell, this is a transition that began sometime before Fleming started playing varsity volleyball in high school. So, it's something we talk a lot about. I'm sorry I'm struggling, but it's a really hard issue, because you have to remember that you're still dealing with, again, a 21-year-old person, a young person who's very confused, probably going through a lot of mental anguish. This is probably taking a huge toll on Blair Fleming, on all of the teammates. Like, there are a lot of people involved with this story that, I want to make sure that we are careful about, protecting their feelings and everything. Man, I'm sorry I'm struggling here, but it's hard, Dan. It is hard.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, think about the situation you're in. Both of you want to go play college sports, right? And you're trying to figure out, who you are as a person. You go play college sports, and you join a locker room. Now people are protesting you, and you're the captain of the team, and you obviously, as a woman, look, everybody tries to be empathetic, but you're also like, I really don't want to shower with somebody that is a dude. And yeah, it's why, I don't know. Look, bottom line, let me ask you, if I'm a woman and I want to stand up for women's sports, or if I'm an athletic director, let me take it to the athletic director. Women have to stand up, but athletic directors and the governor of Idaho apparently has cheered this on, Boise State
Wyoming.
and Southern Utah. Wyoming, saying no. Good for you. And that surprises me, Danny. I mean, that you're getting that kind of support when it's a hot button issue for a lot of people politically.
So let me say this too about Fleming, and I wrote this when it came to the Olympic boxing, the two women in the Olympic boxing, and I wrote that I felt bad because, again, these are people dealing with serious health issues, essentially, whether it's mental health or, in the case of the boxers, likely some actual physical deformities, which is extremely sad, and we should have empathy for them. But we have to remember, Dan, that just because we feel bad or we have empathy doesn't mean you just get to do whatever you want. I mean, it's really sad that some people are born with cerebral palsy. That's really sad. It's a terrible disease, and I wish no one was born with it. But it doesn't mean you get to play shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds, which is what I would love to do, but I don't get to do it either. Now, I'm not dealing with what they're dealing with, but we don't all get to do everything we want to do just because we want to. And yes, it might be Blair Fleming's dream to play women's volleyball, but unfortunately, Blair Fleming was born male. So you don't get to do it. I'm sorry. And I think this goes to a bigger cultural issue with, kind of the generation that we're in of this, if you dream it, you can do it. And a lot less of the life is unfair mantra, which is what I grew up a lot more with. You don't get to do everything all the time. And when you start infringing upon other people, that's when we have like, look, Blair Fleming, if you want to live as a woman and you want to, I don't care. I could not care less what Blair Fleming does in Fleming's personal time. I don't care.
Right.
Couldn't care less. You want to have surgery, you want to take hormones. You're now an adult. It's your body. You can do whatever the heck you want to it. But you can't play women's sports. I'm sorry, because now you're taking a spot away from women. Now you're playing against women. You're putting them in harm's way. Like now you are infringing upon the rights of other people. And that's where we have an issue. And we have to draw a line somewhere, Dan. Someone has to be the adult in the room and say, look, this just can't be the way that it is. Sorry.
That's a really good way to put it. My situation. I live with a woman who was one of the fighters, played for Title IX. I said this earlier on, I think it was Charlie's show. I mean, this is fairly recent. She's not that old. She had to move to Michigan to be able to play women's sports. Like, they didn't have softball in Ohio, which is fascinating to me. It's unbelievable to me. Let me go this route to you. The dam is broken open now. Do you anticipate, your own personal opinion, do you anticipate other teams stepping up and saying we're not playing? Or do you anticipate other teams rallying around San Jose State and Fleming?
Yeah, so at some point, the Mountain West is going to have to do something. We have been reaching out to the Mountain West constantly, and they have been doing everything they can to kick this can down the road. They keep telling us, like, refer to the NCAA statement. We reached out to the NCAA. They gave a statement, but the NCAA doesn't really control anything when it comes to the regular season. The NCAA doesn't really kind of have to step in until the championships start, essentially the women's volleyball tournament. But the NCAA is hoping and praying that this goes away before then, right? Like they want someone else to handle this before they have to get involved at all, because that's what the NCAA does. Well, that's what the Mountain West is trying to do. They keep saying like, well, refer to the team statement, and we're not going to do anything until we have to. And the Board of Governors, this is what they told me. The Board of Governors could change the rules if it gets to a point, but they're just hoping it doesn't. They're hoping and praying it doesn't get to that Either Fleming feels public pressure and quits the team, or teams just decide to play against Fleming and San Jose State. Everyone in this, again, it's what I said 2 minutes ago. Someone has to be an adult in the room, and no one wants to be an adult. No one wants to take a stand. No one wants to have to do anything. And so, but we're getting that point of critical mass, Dan, where the Mountain West specifically, because this is now conference season and you've now had 2 forfeits. So you have a San Jose State team that's played 1 conference game and is 3-0 in the Mountain West. That's a problem, okay? Because there's a Mountain West tournament coming up at the end of next month, and San Jose State is on track to be the number 1 seed without playing all their games. That's an issue for a conference, I would imagine, right? So I do think at some point the Mountain West is going to have to do or say something. We'll see.
That's like a coach's dream. I don't have to play the games. I don't have to sweat the game. I don't have to do all this, and I get wins. Sign me up. I don't have to go through the stress. But it is a bigger issue, and it is going to be interesting because, well, let me ask you this. What's the NCAA's role in this other than to refer it back to the conferences and the schools, right? I assume that's their role in the whole deal, no?
Yeah, like I said, all I know is that the NCAA won't really get involved until it actually has something to do with their championships. I know that essentially they've referred us to the Mountain West, like, hey, the Mountain West has jurisdiction over. And again, let me go back to this. When I initially reached out to the Mountain West, when Southern Utah canceled, they were happy to say, hey, that's a non-conference game. Nothing to do with us. No jurisdiction here. Our hands are clean. Then, of course, Boise State cancels, and they're like, you know what? Nothing to do with us. That's an issue for Boise State. It's an They called it an institutional matter. That's what they said. They said it's an institutional matter. Go to Boise State. And now we reach back out to them after Wyoming. Like, is it still an institutional matter? No response. And they have been very quick to respond to me all the way through this to pass the buck. Now all of a sudden they got nothing to say because now we're at 2. Are we getting to 3? I don't know. San Jose State plays tomorrow night against Colorado State. Is Colorado State going to play? As far as we know right now, they are. We've reached out to Colorado State. They haven't said anything to us otherwise. We've reached out to every school on San Jose State's schedule for the rest of the year. No one has made a definitive statement one way or the other. The only one that responded, I believe, was New Mexico, which just said they had no comment. So that's where we're at right now, Dan.
I always think of who's suing who. Where's the lawsuit? Where's the lawsuit in this?
Well, like I said, I mean, you mentioned it. There is a lawsuit ongoing against the NCAA right now for Title IX.
No. So. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that one. I'm not talking about Riley's lawsuit. I'm talking about who sues who. Does the conference back San Jose and sue people for not breach of contract? I don't know. But I always.
Well, here's an interesting point. This is important.
Go ahead.
Dan, this is important. Remember, San Jose State committed to stay in the Mountain West, right? So we've got these conferences kind of fracturing. The Mountain West probably feels like it has to kind of stand behind the schools that stuck around because they're all trying to bolt. Boise State, for example, that was kind of an easy one for the Mountain West because Boise State's out. They're going to the Pac-12 in 2 years. So, of course, the Mountain West. But as far as I know, Wyoming's not going anywhere. No conference is trying to get Wyoming to go play for them, right? I don't know. Again, conference realignment has kind of scrambled my head a little bit. I don't know who's where half the time because all these schools are switching. But now that you probably have 2 schools that are committed to the Mountain West, it makes it a little bit more interesting. But I think the initial plan was probably to back San Jose State, the school that decided to stick around.
No, I would assume. I mean, you got to be loyal to who's in your conference. And, we, as Seinfeld taught us, we do things out of spite. Boise, you're leaving. Screw you. Let's move it this way. I tell you this, though. I was looking at Hookstead's Twitter feed, and, boys, there's a lot of support for what the Wyoming women did. I mean, boy, there's a ton of support. I think, you know what, volleyball players all across the country are saying, hey, look, don't be taking opportunities away from us. Let's not go backwards. Let's go forward. Hey, my friend, thanks for coming on. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Dan.
There he goes, the great Danny Z. No, it's a hell of a story. And, maybe it's too personal for me based on my wife and my stepdaughter playing volleyball or softball, but it is a fascinating story, and only OutKick is all over it. ESPN can't cover this. Are you kidding me? Hey, right now on ESPN, I'm telling you, the worst dressed woman ever. You got to check out these pants on this woman. Now, I am, according to my wife and everybody that knows me, an absolute women's fashion expert. I am. I will wear that like a badge, that I am a woman's fashion expert, period. And what this woman has on SportsCenter is the singularly most ridiculous outfit ever. I know I shouldn't promote something else, but it's so asinine. I cannot even believe, I'm saying this like a little girl, I can't believe that she's wearing that. It's amazing to me. All right. Will coaches ever learn? Not seriously. Will coaches ever learn? Let's talk Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni was all the rage. Nick Sirianni, a couple years ago, Eagles in the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts, all that. Nick Sirianni was Socrates. He was Lombardi. He was Belichick. He said the quiet part out loud, and this is not going to be great for him. He stated, I didn't have the guys ready to start. After the Eagles got their ass kicked, second year in a row by Tampa Bay, 33-16. I got to tell you, you never do that. I did that once, and it backfires. You think you're protecting your players, but they take advantage. And, of course, you didn't have them ready to start because, well, they were down like 28-zip or something idiotic. So everybody knows they weren't ready to start, and you blaming yourself only confirms what people are already saying. You can't coach blind turkeys that take a shit. Now, we obviously didn't start well, down 24-0 to start things off. Obviously, no excuse for that. We didn't come out. We didn't coach well enough. We didn't play well enough. I didn't have the guys ready to start. Every single idiotic media member, NFL, Philadelphia, is going to blame you. Every single idiotic player and their people are going to blame you. Every fan is going to blame you. Don't admit it. Don't give them the ammunition. I didn't have the guys ready to start, but our fundamentals weren't what we needed it to be. Who coaches that, dummy? You dumbass. Who coaches? Are players responsible for the fundamentals? Sure, on the field after they've been coached. I'm just telling you. Coaches, listen to me. Look deep into these baby blues, these blood-stained, old, weary eyes, these alcohol-fueled mess, and listen to me. Don't ever admit these things. Don't. We'll make sure we're working hard on that. Bye week is coming up at a good time. But, yeah, we didn't play well enough, coach well enough, fundamentally, penalty-wise, everything. Just don't do that. We saw it. We know. Jesus, people are stupid. Speaking of stupid and frauds and everything else, Hugh Freeze, Auburn coach, he recapped the fallout from the Tigers' 27-21 loss to Oklahoma, as well as the program's 2-3 start. 2-3 at Auburn might get you shit can, taking a shot at his predecessor. See, this is what the fake religious do. I've told you this before. If you are in a meeting, a business meeting, non-church related, insurance, investment, advertising, you know what I'm saying, and the person running the meeting wants to start with a prayer, run out of the room backwards and hold on to your wallet. Why backwards? Because generally your wallet's in your back pocket. Hold on to it. They're trying to steal, cheat, and rob you. That is Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze blaming his predecessor. Now, that's like all of these idiots in the Harris, whatever that guy's name is, Creepy Timmy Tampon Waltz, blaming Trump 3.5 years in. It's never the fake religious's fault. It's the predecessor for the current roster. I think you're all aware of what we inherited. That's Hugh Freeze. Let's hear from America's phoniest football coach.
Coach, you mentioned in your opening statement about what you and your staff have inherited here. In year 2, was the roster so barren and was the previous regime's job so poor in recruiting that fans shouldn't expect more than a 2-3 start when you have 5 home games to begin the year?
Yeah, I won't comment on what happened before I was here. The roster was what it was. Everybody can make their own determination on that, on how many people left and the recruiting rankings and what was brought in. So you can look at that and make your own determination. Should the fans expect more than a 2-3 start? Absolutely. I mean, we could easily, like I said in my opening statement, be sitting here being 5-0, but we didn't get it done. And you know, we can point to the coaching errors and we can point to the 11 turnovers and all of those things. It's a mixture, and it's our job to get it. We could point to our youth, but we've got there's like I said earlier, that we can sit here and talk about all those things, but we're a result oriented profession, and those results didn't go our ways, so. There's no way that I can sit here and say that those 3 games weren't winnable.
Let me give you coach speak. Let me decipher. He's totally blaming everyone else. He is doing it, what does the kids say, passive-aggressively, and he's doing it like the douchebag that he is. That's the best I can give to you. That's exactly what he's doing. He's doing it like the fake fraud, religious, zealot, whatever the hell you call it, douchebag that he is. That's what he just did there. We could talk about all, but I'm not going to talk about what was here in the past, but blah, 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 all about the past. No surprise. I mean, it's like, you know, you do a deal with the devil, you get the devil. I think there's an old parable. I think a guy lifts something out of a tiger's foot, and then the tiger eats the animal that takes the thorn out of the tiger's foot and say, well, you knew what I was when you met me. You know what Hugh Freeze is when you meet him. I mean, there's nothing I can tell you. Hey, Netflix, I kind of dig Netflix. I do. I'm a Netflix fan. I like Netflix. I watch Netflix. But good for Netflix. Why good for Netflix? Well, and I don't know what the hell is going on with my script here, so I'm going to turn it over and see if that helps. It doesn't. But anyway, Netflix, to me, made a mistake. The CEO of Netflix decided it was going to be a good idea. He got caught up in the whole, you know what, she's a person of color. I must support her, blah, 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 blah. Total nonsense. Not reading the room, not understanding that all across America, people love Donald Trump. In big cities, people don't. And those cities want a bunch of stuff that Donald Trump will probably deliver, but they don't know it yet. So according to Bloomberg, Netflix cancellation in the U.S. nearly tripled in July after Chairman Reed Hastings endorsed Kamala Harris and donated $7 million to a pro-Harris super PAC. Michael Jordan was on to something when he famously quoted, hey, look, even Republicans buy sneakers too. A total of, listen to this, 2.8% of subscribers canceled their subscription in July. Netflix suffered a similar cancellation rate in February, but that was mostly because the company phased out its basic tier, its lowered price ad feed. Hey, Siri, I'm not talking to you, so why the hell are you spouting up? See? Those of you that don't believe in listen to this. This is Siri. I never said the word Siri, and she's sitting here talking to me. Go to hell, Siri. Get off my line. You know what I'm saying? Get off. The deep state's always listening. The hell out of here. Anyway, the long-term total of 2.8%. All right, the long-term effect of those incidents can be hard to gauge. This report said advertisers and companies were eager to speak out on social issues following the murder of George Floyd. Many companies raced to show their support for the black community and started new programs and initiatives to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI. Netflix shifted cash to black-owned banks while Hastings donated to historically black universities. Yeah, people don't care about that. We knew what that was about. But when you're going to endorse and give money to a campaign that's as fraudulent as Kamala Harris, there's probably going to be backlash. Look, the American people know this is total bullshit. The American people know that everything Harris and Walt stand for is creepy, ridiculous, race-driven, and, of course, no policies. You got to have a policy. Hey, we did an interview with Buck Showalter yesterday, 2 days ago, before Pete Rose died, and we want to play it for you now because Buck Showalter was fantastic. Hey, welcome back. Look, I've never met Buck Showalter, but I've always liked Buck Showalter. I'll tell you why. Because when I was at ESPN, everybody at ESPN loved Buck Showalter because he was one of the few guys that when he got out of managing and went to ESPN, he told everybody the truth. He wasn't trying to sit there and bullshit his way back into the big leagues. So when I got out of coaching, I said, screw it, I'll go to ESPN and I'll tell everybody the truth. Coach Showalter joins us now. You guys mostly know Coach Showalter as a star of Seinfeld. I mean, when George wanted to change the cotton uniforms, who did they go to? He went to this man right here, Coach. Thanks for coming on.
You know, it's funny. Hey, Dan, I appreciate it. Through the years, I guess that show ended up being real popular. I know it is, but my kids, when I told them about it, I said, hey, this show called Seinfeld or something is calling me. Oh, Dad, you got to do it. You got to do it. So we get up at 8 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast. We got to be there. We just played a night game, playing the Angels, go to an auxiliary locker room, and did it in one take, Dan. I was pretty proud of myself, but everybody kept laughing at what's the little guy, George Costanza? He was beautiful, but looking back on it, I was told not to do that show again. Mr. Steinbrenner didn't like them making fun of him, but later on he embraced it because he kind of liked the notoriety with it. And every time they show that episode, I get $19 worth of taxes I have to pay. So I hope they quit running it.
It was what, you, Danny Tartable, maybe a really young Derek Jeter, I think. Wasn't that it?
Paul O'Neill was in it.
Paul O'Neill, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to laugh because we sprayed water on Tartable, And O'Neill told him that's the only time he's ever seen him sweat was when they put water on him.
Coach, you had the distinction of managing, both the Yankees and the Mets. Look, here's my deal. My dad grew up like most dads his age. Everybody wanted to be Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Yogi Berra. I love the Yankees. So I'm a Cub fan. I grew up in Gary, Indiana. But I always tell these guys here, look, the Mets don't matter. The Yankees are all that matter. That's obviously not true. What was the difference in managing each team?
Well, I kind of grew up with I'd stand in front of the TV and emulate Mickey Mantle's black and white games, his stance. Pee Wee Reese and Dizzy Dean were doing the game of the week. First time I asked my dad what an old Falstaff was, I didn't know it was a beer. What a blue darter was, what a humpback line drive. It was beautiful. But I don't know. It's kind of like depends on which one you're managing and coaching. Because you're always trying to make it matter. I don't get into comparing. They both have different challenges. The Yankees have a little more history. That's true. They've been around a lot longer. But, sometimes people want to say like the little brother, the Mets. But I didn't feel that way. I think they're carving out a pretty good niche.
Hey, Coach, I do want to go back to Steinbrenner. I've always said this about George Steinbrenner. Tell me if I'm wrong. When my dad, Yankee fan, but in the early 70s, Yankees weren't very good. Steinbrenner takes it over, and I always, in my own mind, admired George Steinbrenner because he knew what he had, and he needed to get it back to where it was. He understood the history, tradition, and said, screw it, I don't give a damn. I'm here to win. If it pisses you off, it pisses you off. I don't care. That's how we kind of felt with Indiana basketball with Coach Knight. Like, we're here to win. Okay, it's our thing. We're here. We don't give a shit. I always felt Steinbrenner knew what he had in the Yankees and delivered for the most part.
But it's funny you said that. I got to think about it while you were talking. Indiana and Coach Knight. I think that's why he and Mr. Steinbrenner got along well. I was there 19 years with the organization, so he afforded me an opportunity to take care of my family. But you know what? And I played for a while, and then I started coaching But the job description. The fans there, I've given some advice through the years. People don't want to hear it. You know what it is. He cares about winning. And I tell you what, you talking about sniff out a phony in a heartbeat, he would. Because if you're in those meetings behind closed doors and you kowtow down to he wants somebody with a little backbone, with a little pushback. I call them pushback guys. I love surrounding myself with pushback guys. I don't want everybody's just going to kiss my rear and tell me what I want to hear. But I got along well with him. It broke my heart when I had to leave over the 4 coaches he wanted to fire. But I had no problem. The minor leagues, when we left camp, the minor league managers, there were 6 or 7 of us. We had 2 jobs. We had to win the league and we had to develop players. And that was one and the same, learning how to win. He didn't want to hear about this player development doesn't win games. One year we won all 6 of our leagues in the minor leagues. That was the only year they gave out watches instead of rings. Not that I remember. But he wanted that installed in his players all the way through. But people don't realize, I tell you, for a while there in the early 90s, it was ugly. And there's a special called the Bronx Zoo that reminded me of how ugly some of that was.
I had knee surgery. I watched the Bronx Zoo in like 2 afternoons. I watched and watched and watched and watched. It was unbelievable.
Dan, let me tell you something. My wife and I looked at each other and said, oh, my God, I forgot about that. There's 2 or 3 of those guys. And I tell you, I remember Gene Michael and I said, "All right, we're gonna start doing the addition by subtraction." And the great Gene Michael, architect, he brought in people that it mattered to play in the game the right way. It was fun to watch him put that together.
Coach, when you look at baseball now, I'm guessing you used analytics, but is analytics, a lot of former players, a lot of players are saying it's too much. As a manager, how do you balance it?
Well, the greatest, I think, situation is a collaboration. We were doing it back in the early 80s. I remember my wife used to chart the games. I'd bring home where they hit the ball, the other team, and you had these charts and all these different things. But now we've got more information. We've got more of a sampling. We're able to feed it in. And, I thought part of my job was to make everybody comfortable in bringing what they bring. But you have to have respect for what people on the field know and bring and what people up there know and bring. And there's room for everybody. It should never be where it's clashing. It should be a collaboration of everybody bringing, I always want to make people feel comfortable coming in my office and bring something. The difference is I would go, wait a minute, there's a heartbeat to the game too. There's some things going on here that he may not follow that line of analytic that you think he's going to, and we're always projecting human beings of what they're going to be. Did you see where the Giants named Buster Posey the new GM? That was interesting.
Yeah. What do you make of that?
Well, I think some people want, Bob Melvin, I really like him as a manager. I think he's proven. And I think that's what I'm talking about. There has to be a collaboration where things aren't being forced down people's throats, both sides. And you go, listen, and it makes us all better. I think we're all using the same analytic tools, basically, Ken. If you think about it, there's nothing, it just depends on what you choose to weight. If you weight on base percentage, or you weight exit velocity, or you weight spin rate, whatever you want to put your organization's emphasis on finding, that's fine. But, so if everybody's looking at the same tools, what's the difference maker? That's my question. What's the difference maker? What's the difference between, we're in a season where I think only 2 teams won over 95 games or 95 or above. Nobody won 100 games. I mean, what's going on here? There's I think you're seeing a lot of people are doing the same things. And some of the people that break out from it, there's not a whole lot of new going on.
You think baseball's better for Moneyball?
Well, Moneyball was proven to be a farce. No people in the game know it was just a Hollywood thing. It really, no one talks about the 4 starting pitchers they had. It was they embellished a lot of things to make it work, but most people in the game know it was complete fiction. That really wasn't what happened out there. So when even the author has talked about it. So when I hear somebody mention Moneyball, it has a different connotation to people that are on the field. They all just kind of roll their eyes and go, yeah, right. Nobody mentions Barry Zito and Mulder and all those guys that were pitching for those guys.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I had our guy we talked about off air, Danny Plezak, said that. He goes, I get it. Moneyball is a Hollywood thing, but damn, they had good starters. Damn, they're good starters. You know what I mean?
Other things, too. They're a good team. What makes a good manager is good players. You have a good manager. No one wants to. I didn't like the way they portrayed Art Howe there. Art was a good baseball man.
I didn't either. I don't know Art Hall, but I thought it was bullshit personally. I don't know him, nothing about him. I remember him as a third baseman for the Houston Astros, and when I saw that, I thought somewhere, somehow, Art Howe pissed off the director or producers. I just felt like something happened there where they went stupid on Art Howe, and I thought it was no good.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think the most realistic? I've always said if somebody could make a realistic sports movie where, that's really how it is in college basketball. That's really how it is in pro baseball. What's the closest to real that you remember?
Boy, that is a great question. I was in the movie Blue Chips, and Blue Chips was Nick Nolte starred in it. And I'll tell you what they did that was fascinating to me. We played as Indiana against Shaquille O'Neal, Penny Hardaway in a gym, and we played real games. Like it was Indiana against Western, and they put a crowd came in, they were told, and they tipped it up, and it was real officials, real game, and they put, I think it was 10 different cameras at different angles in the crowd. So it wasn't one of those, like in Hoosiers. I don't know if you've ever seen Hoosiers. But Hoosiers, they did a basketball scene and then they stopped it, and then they redid a basketball. This was just, so that part was realistic. The other stuff, was Nick Nolte and Bill Friedkin stayed with us for 10 days, myself, Coach Knight, and they studied us. So that was pretty realistic. The play was really realistic, Coach.
It's funny. I met Kevin Costner in a golf tournament one time. I think he played baseball at one of the Cal schools, and he is really really reached out to try to make them realistic. Have you seen the movie Draft Day, the NFL Draft Day with Costner?
I did.
That's
yes,
real.
I did.
In a lot of drafts, we ran the expansion draft in Arizona. That's a story for another day. Running an expansion draft, but I think he really tries to be realistic. And but
well, let me ask you. Let me ask you. What's a baseball movie where you don't go, oh, that's bullshit? Where you don't go, oh, that's bullshit?
There's not many. I'm going to be nice here. Bull Durham had a lot of realistic to it, but it always gets, money always gets in the way. You want to make money, you got to embellish it for Hollywood a little bit. But as well as I do, Dan, real life sports is realistic, and it can break your heart, and it's not always storybook, and getting to the end is tough, and that's what you miss when you're out of the game. It's that day-to-day grind with a group of individuals trying to reach a goal. I think if you could somehow catch that, and they try, but the Hollywood part of it always gets in the way.
Let me ask you, as a baseball manager with 162 games, like when I coached basketball, either as a head coach or assistant coach with Coach Knight, every game, every loss was like a death. How do you go about 162 games? Not only yourself but the players. How do you keep a level head the whole time?
Well, you got to have a good base back home. Place whether it's family or whatever. I chuckle when I hear a football coach say they weren't ready to play this week. My God, you just came off an off week. or a basketball coach, it's just one of those things that, try strapping it on for 200 games, Dan, counting spring training. Okay? 7 days a week. Like holidays. Somebody the other day said, hey, it's Labor Day. You went, oh, okay, what day is that? Holidays don't mean anything. It's just a day game. And getaway days, and the first thing you look at your schedule, you're looking for day game getaway days and getting into cities at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't think people really realize the grind of a major league season, and I think it's what separates it from every other sport. I just got through voting for the Player of the Year for Baseball Digest, and I got to tell you, it's tough for me to vote for a guy that DHs only. As far as the value to a team over the games. And I love Ohtani, but, a lot of people are basing it on the fact that he pitched last year. And the stolen base in today's game is so much easier because, you got the clock, you can't throw over, the bases are shorter. I mean, Ricky Hendricks would have stole 200 bases in today's rules. So, the poor catchers, nobody can throw anybody out. They've got a running lead because when the clock's ticking down, they just take off on the clock. They're in their third step by the time the pitcher throws the ball. And I'm being I'm dramatic here, but stolen bases are a lot easier to come by nowadays.
Coach, let me ask you about Ohtani. People talking about best players ever seen. You and I talked about Barry Bonds. Where is Ohtani on this whole list?
History will tell us a little bit. Wherever you want to say about Barry, there weren't many people that you always looked in the batting order when he was going to hit again. And Jeff Kent won an MVP one year, hitting behind him just by having people on base all the time. The walk totals. Ohtani, because of the pitcher, and I think sometimes because he's on the West Coast, we don't quite get a date. Can you imagine this guy played in New York City? What would go on with him?
Right.
I love the fact that he's handled it well. I went over to Japan when I was with the Diamondbacks to try to get an agreement with the team. And, a lot of long story, but Ichiro was over there, Suzuki, and I'm telling you, he was bigger in Japan than Michael Jordan ever was here. It was like Michael Jackson every time he walked out of the room. And I remember I got a picture of him in a Diamondback uniform. I almost didn't get out of the country. It was like taking a national treasure, a picture with it. That wasn't a very good idea. But I think the size and the strength and the speed and the grace that he plays the game with, there's a certain it's been fun to watch, and there's been a lot of pressure on him, especially playing out in LA. I think we looked through the prism this year of him being a pitcher, and he didn't. If he had a pitched this year, I'd have voted for him number one. But I think what people miss, the Angel people said, it really put their rotation in a bind because you never knew when he was going to pitch. He'd take 6 days off or 5 days off or 7 days off. And the other 4 pitchers, it was always, baseball players are creatures of habit. And it really made it tough for them to get into a routine. Not that anybody wouldn't sacrifice that to have Ohtani on their club, but there's some other parts of that.
What do you think? I grew up, you're a little bit older than me, but when I grew up, and I'm sure when you grew up, the Oakland A's were great. I could name to this day Bando and Tennis and freaking Campaneris and Dick Green. And, I mean, god dang. And it hurt. It doesn't hurt me because it doesn't affect me, but it's sad to see what's happening in Oakland from a guy with your perspective, being in the bigs for all those years and all the history that Major League Baseball has. What's your perspective on the A's leaving Oakland?
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it. One, it's tough for baseball. I feel awful for those fans. That was some great baseball there. By the way, one of the great sound systems in sports. Great music there. The guy who was a PA announcer, the field was immaculate, except when football season started and there were stripes through the middle of it and it was screwed up. You always knew when the Raiders had played. Then from the other side of it, the locker room, I mean, most people wear shower shoes to shower. You needed shower boots. The toilet's getting backed up. There was no kitchen. The air conditioning. It was a tough place to spend 3 or 4 days. It's like Fenway Park and old Yankee Stadium, but those are cathedrals. God forbid you ever say anything bad about Fenway Park. America's most beloved ballpark. Yeah, we got a few other names for it, trust me, as a visiting team. But, it's like Old Shea Stadium. There had more stuff coming out of those drains. But I don't like it for baseball. I think but I don't know all the background workings and everything. It's just sad to me to watch that last game because I got a lot of great memories there. Those Oakland teams, Vita Blue, the names, Raleigh Fingers, Blue Moon Odom. Come on. Where are the nicknames
now? What's the best baseball nickname you came across? You have one?
That I guess Charlie Finley tried to get those guys to all have a nickname, Jim Catfish Hunter. And the ones that I remember,
I didn't know that.
The one that stuck in my mind was I can't really say over the air, embarrass somebody. We had a few on bus rides. Those 14, 15-hour bus rides, you find out a lot about people in the minor leagues. It's the only time these guys.
I only played.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, that's the only. I've seen guys back then. There wasn't water. You didn't hydrate. You didn't put, 15 bottles of water. I mean, you drive for 10 hours and you couldn't stop. So, but they had a way of putting a lot of beer on there, and guys would drink and go to sleep and wake up, and there's nothing to drink, so you would drink another beer. After sleeping for 4 or 5 hours up in the luggage rack. I mean. And you were expected to hang out 2 line drives the next day. And, hey, I thought we had it great. I was getting paid to play baseball. Are you kidding me?
Honest to God. You like expanding the playoffs? You like what's happening in baseball with the playoffs?
I got to tell you, it all revolves around what the fans want. If it enhances their love of the game, I'll go along with most anything. I like making the regular season matter. Nowadays, it's a crapshoot. It's just get in and roll the dice with a hot pitcher. It really is. There's like 4 times you manage. Dan, you manage the spring training a certain way. You manage the regular season a certain way. You manage September call-up baseball, and then you manage in the playoffs differently. There's really 4 different modes of operation, and I guess the more the merrier. But I won't winning your division. I won't having a good record, and everything that makes the regular season matter. That's why the All-Star game having an effect on the playoffs. I don't think home field advantage plays as much in the postseason. When a pitcher's on top of his game and a hitter's on top of his game, the pitcher wins. And that's why a team like, say, the Detroit Tigers with Scooble, beware. You get a couple hot pitchers in the playoffs. The problem is they have so much wear and tear on them from the season. The guys that are usually these frontline starters don't always pitch as well in the postseason because they're out of bullets. At some point, you get out of bullets.
Coach, what's the difference? You mentioned there's a difference, regular season and playoff. What's the difference in how you manage the regular season to the playoffs? What do you do in the playoffs that's different?
Well, it's a sense of urgency. Every inning, every pitch. Sometimes in the regular season, you may live to fight another day. Sometimes you may not put your best foot forward on a day game getaway and blow up your bullpen, but have a situation where you can win the next 6 or 7 games, or that if you use a guy again, he's going to be down and this and that, whatever. And you have to look at the big picture all the time during the regular season. As it dwindles down, you hit September, then you go to the throttle and you go to the whip, so to speak. And I think I see some guys in April doing things, and I go, you're going to pay for that right around June and July, and they do. You got to be careful about going to that whip too early, because the game that we play will expose all strengths and weaknesses. They'll always show up sooner or later. And I tell the guys all the time, if you're true to the game, the baseball gods will let you off the deck. And you saw it with the Tigers this year.
I got to ask you, you mentioned pitchers. So I got to ask. I remember my birthday, August 17th, I think it was 1976. My dad got 2 tickets. We were in Detroit, 4 tickets. We went to watch Mark the Bird Fidrich in front of 50,000, pitch a complete game. Guy named Kim, who ended up being Bruce Kim, hit a home run in the game. I'll never forget. When I was a kid going to Wrigley Field or Comiskey, we looked at the pitching matchup. Carlton against Fergie Jenkins. We got to go there. Kenny Holtzman, against whomever. Coach, why do pitchers now are not able to go 200, 250, whatever innings when they were so easily doing it back then?
Well, there's a long answer there. When you're chasing velocity and max effort, there were different types of pitching. And I had a good friend who was a pitching coordinator, started this year with the organization. And he called me, he said, do you realize, I just looked, we didn't have a single pitcher in our minor leagues last year that threw 100 innings. But yet we're preparing them to pitch in the big leagues. I think sometimes the preparation is such, and the money in the contracts and trying to protect guys' arms and this and whatever, taking guys out with no hitters and pitch counts. And, one of our problems, this is going to sound crazy, is that Tommy John surgery has become too easy and too good. It's too good. It used to be you never had 2 of them. Now it's like you're seeing 15, 14, 16-year-old kids getting it. I mean, the growth plates aren't even closed. When I see a kid that's played baseball only, travel ball, it's a big red flag for me in bios, because you want those guys that play multiple sports, that learn how to fall, learn how to, it's funny, Dan. I see guys that can't slide. I know they didn't play basketball or football, and you learn how, because all a slide is a controlled fall. And it's just, I'd get off on it here if I don't watch it. But the pitching, I just think it's a different pitching mode. It's chasing spin. It's chasing my top velocity. And, the max effort thing just doesn't play over the long haul of a game. These guys used to coast. They would coast in the bottom of the order. Kurt Schilling, probably the best all-around pitcher I ever had, he would see how long he could pitch without throwing anything but a fastball. He would throw it up and away, up and in, down and in. He would move. If he got through the first time in the batting order without throwing anything but fastballs, it was over. Because, about the second or third time around the order, you break out the slider and the split, and you were done. Watching, he was so far ahead of his time. He had notes on every pitcher, every hitter. He would look at them between innings. A lot of the stuff they're doing now, they think is new, and guys were doing it years ago.
He a Hall of Famer, Schilling?
Oh, without a doubt. But he's going to have a problem because, some other things, I'm sure. Kurt Schilling was a big game pitcher. You talking about nails? Oh, my gosh. So competitive.
Yeah, it's amazing. You get involved in the wrong side of the media politically, and all of a sudden you weren't a Hall of Fame pitcher. I'll never understand that, Coach. I don't give a damn if if you murder somebody or you bet on baseball, apparently, but I'll never understand how people can hold Kurt Schilling's political views against him to make the Baseball Hall of Fame, for crying out loud.
He was the best pitcher I ever had. I'll leave it at that. I think a lot of I tell you, Kurt came over in a trade, and I'll never forget our GM said, well, he's hurt. And I said, well, if you wait till he's healthy, you're never going to be able to acquire him. Because once he gets healthy, and we traded 3 or 4 guys for him, and he kind of rehabbed the first year. And the next year, he and Randy Johnson, it was great. They were so competitive against each other. Kurt would pitch a 8-inning shutout, and he'd walk by Randy and go, there you go, big boy, match that one tomorrow. See if you can do that tomorrow. Oh, it was fun. Those 2 guys on the same club made the manager real smart.
Hey, I'm keeping you too long, but I can't let you go without asking you, since we're on pitching. What's Paul Skeens to you? Where is he headed?
Well, he's got it, and you know what I'm talking about from coaching. He's got the it factor, okay, and he's got a certain growl. He doesn't like hitters. There's a growl. There's okay, let's go. I'm not going to back off a challenge. What? Let me see your bubblegum card. I don't care. Why do you see my bubblegum card? And I worry about him physically because he's chasing that velocity. It's so tough this time of year. You want to, you want to kind of back these guys off, and they talk about deliveries and everything. I always look for deliveries that were deceptive. I remember one time we took a kid from Australia, Mark Hutton, who threw about 96, and he was Gossage, and arms and legs went everywhere. And some pitching coach smoothed him out, and he looked like Iron Mike. And as soon as they smoothed him out, guys were having a fight at the bat rack to hit off of him. So I'm careful about chasing guys' deliveries that are deceptive. And that's why I always stood in the batter's box and looked at the pitch come in. What is different? What's different about their presentation? But I worry about him when I see guys throwing that hard. At some point, the human arm just wasn't made to stand up to that type of stress. I hope it never happens. I hope he's the exception. And I think he's got a good delivery. I look for guys that use their legs and use the big muscles, aren't putting a lot of strain on shoulders and elbows. And there's a way to look at it. But, okay, would you change – if his delivery was bad, would you change it all, so you could keep him healthy, and then all of a sudden he's not getting anybody out? That's the quandary that pitching coaches and managers have. They see where a guy's headed, but he won't get anybody out. And sometimes you can't get their attention until they get hurt. So sometimes you have to play a waiting game. Love watching him pitch. Would you have shut him down about a month ago, or would you let him keep pitching? That's
Coach,
tough.
That is tough. That's. I would base with my experience. I wouldn't know what to do. With your experience, I would trust you. You've done that. You're out of the pennant race, and you don't. I don't know. You said something earlier that really hit me. I get, people talk about in my sport or in basketball, players should be paid and blah, 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 blah. I remember going to Indiana thinking, damn, this is the greatest thing ever. I get scholarship. My brother had to go work in a damn steel mill to pay for his college. I didn't have to work in no steel mill. I just had to show up and, practice basketball. My brother used to punch me every day. He'd get down from the bunk bed 5 o'clock in the morning, go work in a steel mill to pay for his college. I used to tell him, you should have practiced more, dumbass. And he'd punch me right in the back, and I'd roll over and go to bed. So if I'm Skeens, I want to pitch. I don't know. I want to pitch is what I do.
Yeah, it's a great hardball line with the family. So how good do we have it, or what? Who's got it better than us?
Oh, did we lose Coach?
Yeah, I don't. I went to.
I don't know.
I would not have been able to go to college if I didn't have a baseball scholarship. I had 2 sisters my parents were trying to put through school, and my dad later on said, "Man, I'm glad you got a couple of hits when that guy was there, because you'd have been working down at the Dewdrop Inn." And so, yeah, I know I'm not one of those guys that stands on the front porch screaming at the young kids. I love a lot of the things that are going on, but the game, you still got to do the same things to win. You still got to surround yourself with people that have a pure heart and are sincere, and that's why you're always going to need the guys that can figure out the heartbeat, because especially in our sport, more than any other, you play so many games. Dan, there's such a lure to give yourself an emotional and a mental day off, that those guys that can grind it and bring it every day, it's the utility infielder, it's the 5th starter, it's the 6th inning reliever, it's the 4th outfielder. Those are the guys that really keep the glue together. I call them the what-if guys. Something happens to somebody. Can we maintain a level of play while we're waiting on this guy to get back? And, those guys are important. And A lot of people don't know what they look like. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Hey, last thing before I let you go, who's the team? Who you like? Who you like to win the World Series?
Well, let's see. Keep doing that too because I got to go up there and work this week, and they're going to remind me of it. I pull for Baltimore because I was there, and I love the people there, and I hope that they do well. And I'm going to pull for Baltimore and New York, Mets and the Yankees for that matter. I know a lot of people there, but I want to tell you the Padres got my attention, and there's always one team. I'm going to cover everybody so I don't leave anybody out. Detroit. There's a good feel to them right now. They're the little engine that could, and then you always got the heart of the champion guy. Everybody counted Houston out, and the Astros got it going on a little bit now. They got a little edge in their giddy up, so it's going to be fun. That's what's beautiful about the playoffs. Is you got all these people things are positive, and then they clash, and then the cruelty of the game is you're sitting at home, and now all of a sudden people don't like you anymore, and you're a distant. So it's cruel. That's the reality of sports. It can be your biggest ego inflator, and it can knock you down. You think you got to figure it out, Dan? It will knock you to your knees. You know that better than anybody.
Oh, shit. I say that about everything, Coach. You think you got your marriage figured out? Shit, just wait a minute. You think, everything. Hey, I have really enjoyed this. Will you come when the playoffs get going in the World Series? Will you come back and we can talk about what's going on in the playoffs? Will you just do that?
Wait a minute, Dan. Let me see how busy I am. Yeah, I'm good. Good.
Hey, tell my guy Danny, please, that hello.
Hey, I'm going to go see Plesac on Monday, and we'll get some horses for you.
Thank you. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate you. Thank you.
God bless. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye. See you guys.
Man, was that fun. Boy, was that a blast with Buck Showalter. I can see why. I'm telling you, everybody at ESPN loved him. I mean, when I went in there, like, wow, this dude's great. What a great thing. Thanks to everybody for setting that up. Hey, we'll be right back. What a great time.